The Tudor monarchs ruled from 1485 to 1603. Their dynasty began because of the War of the Roses. This was a civil war in England that went off and on from 1455 to 1485. Two branches of the same royal family fought for control of the throne. It was called the War of the Roses because one house, the Lancasters, had a red rose to symbolize their branch, and the House of York used a white rose to symbolize their branch. Eventually, the House of Lancaster won. Henry Tudor VII seized the throne when he defeated King Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. He then married a lady of the House of York to unite the families. Next to the throne was his son, Henry VIII. Henry wanted more than anything a son to secure the Tudor line. He actually married 6 times. But he only had 3 children, Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward. His first wife was Catherine of Aragon. She was the daughter of the King of Spain. She gave him his daughter Mary, but bore no sons. Eventually, Henry decided to divorce Catherine. This was partially because he still wanted a son, and partially because he had met someone new. Anne Boleyn was one of the Queen's ladies-in-waiting, and Henry wanted to marry her. However, this was not as simple as Henry thought it would be. At this time, England was a Catholic nation, and a monarch could only gain a divorce with the permission of the Pope. However, in this case, the Pope refused to grant permission, partly because of Catherine's powerful allies. Furious, Henry decided to break with the Catholic Church and establish a Protestant Church of England with himself at the head. This created many troubles down the road. Henry's relationship with Anne Boleyn did not last long. She bore him a daughter, Elizabeth, but failed to produce any sons. She was a Protestant, and she did quite a bit to help spread the Reformation and establish the new Protestant Church of England. But in 1536, Henry accused her of infidelity and had her beheaded. Historians are mainly of the opinion that Anne Boleyn was actually innocent of these charges. Henry was simply tired of his wife and looking for an excuse to get rid of her. Besides, he'd already chosen his next wife, Jane Seymour. In fact, he married Jane Seymour just 11 days after Anne's execution. She finally bore him the son he'd always wanted, Edward, but she died shortly afterwards. Henry probably loved her best of all his wives. Next came Anne of Cleves. This time, Henry did not marry for love. This was an arranged marriage for political gain. He wanted to form an alliance with Germany. He agreed to the marriage based simply on a portrait that he received. However, when she actually arrived, Henry thought she was ugly. He even compared her to a horse. He divorced her in less than a year. Anne of Cleves was one of the lucky ones. She was allowed to live out the rest of her days in peace and comfort. Henry's next wife was Catherine Howard. She was very young and very pretty. He married her very soon after his divorce. She was 20 and Henry was 49. The Duke of Norfolk had vouched for her character and convinced the king to marry her. However, it was discovered that Catherine was having an affair with the king's courtier, Thomas Culpeper, and that she had been with other men before her marriage. The king was very fond of Catherine, and he took the news hard. However, he still had her executed for treason in 1542. The king blamed the Duke of Norfolk for what had happened. His final wife was Catherine Parr. She was older and looked after Henry's children. She actually outlived Henry and remarried after his death. Henry's son Edward is one of the main characters in The Prince and the Pauper. He became king after his father's death at the age of 9. He was a Protestant, so he did much to further many of the reformations his father had begun. But illness caused him to die after only 6 years. As Edward lay on his deathbed, he named his cousin Lady Jane Grey as his successor. To do so was to cut out his older sister, Mary. However, Mary was a staunch Catholic like her mother, Catherine of Aragon, and Edward wanted the Protestant Reformation to continue. However, this plan did not work. She was queen for only 9 days. Mary took the throne and had her beheaded for treason. When Mary came to the throne, she was determined to return England to the one true faith, Roman Catholic. She is referred to as Bloody Mary because of all of the Protestants that she had burned at the stake. She reigned for only 5 years before her own death from illness. Next came the younger sister Elizabeth. She was a strong ruler, and she never married. One can't help but wonder if perhaps her father's marriages had some impact on that decision. She ruled during the time of Shakespeare, and she ruled for 45 years. However, since Elizabeth had no children, the crown passed on to the Stuart family, thus making her the end of the Tudor line. In 1603, James I became king.